Hello everyone, welcome to the Redmen TV. It is time for your daily news live. If you're watching along right now, you can get involved in the comments. I'm going to be taking your thoughts on the things that we discussed later on in the show. But we've got a few things to get through in terms of outs and in terms of chat around one particular in as well. We're going to start it with Pedro Quirivella, because what more exciting way to start it than talking about a small Spanish fella who's probably not going to play a lot of first-team football for Liverpool. It looked like his deal to Rosenborg was done. We even discussed it on the podcast yesterday, Chris and I. There was talk of it being a £2.4 million guaranteed rising potentially to 3.5 million. That seemed like it was going to happen. Liverpool had even negotiated a buyout clause that was kind of staggered over 3 years, which would depend upon the fee, etc., etc. All things look really good, and by all accounts, it looks like he's turned it down. He wants to either stay in England or get a move back to Spain. I can kind of appreciate this. It's a bit, in years gone by, Liverpool probably would have desperately needed £2.5 million to make some bit of essential transfer business happen. We're not in that position right now, and I think it's only fair. There's a young lad; he's still got 2 years left on his contract. He's been diligent in his approach when he's been at Liverpool. I'm just going to paraphrase Chris Pajak and saying he's another example of one of those lads who came in under Brendan Rodgers, and he was very much a Brendan Rodgers player. You might have seen more of him if Brendan had stayed at the club, and I think we've had a few of those small, technically gifted lads who maybe just not quite robust enough, fast enough, or whatever to fit into a Jurgen Klopp midfield, but doesn't mean they're bad players. And I think having had the loan spells at Go Ahead Eagles and Willem II, never really known the difference on that. Willem II, Sammy Hippier's former club. He'll be thinking, he's getting passed around Europe at the moment, and he'll probably want to start to put down some roots. So that makes sense. It'd be interesting to see if we do find a transfer for him in the coming days and weeks. But yeah, nothing mega there. One thing that is a done deal though is Ben Woodburn. We now know he will spend the season on loan at Sheffield United. Really, really interesting move this. I think on paper I was a bit put off by the fact that it's Sheffield United, and again, as discussed on this week's podcast, because I think there's a bit of a stigma around the Blades, if I'm honest, and that comes from some time I spent living in Sheffield, and also very much the Neil Warnock side of them being a bit agricultural, a bit physical and what have you. But what if you read the local newspaper, the Star, the Sheffield Star, and they talk about how it's a big positive for how Sheffield United are playing and for their manager as well. And I think that's what Liverpool have done. They've looked at somewhere that's going to play a brand of football that suits the brand of football they want him to learn under, and also at a football club that's they think is going to be competitive this year. This is a Sheffield United that broke, I think they got 100 points in their promotion charge. And to get back into the Championship, they've got something going on there. It's also not too far afield, and you'll be playing in red as well, which is absolutely fine. But look, really, really, I hope he has a great move, and I'm sure everyone will join me in the comments in wishing Ben Woodburn all the best for this loan. Very, very talented young lad. Just not quite there for him in terms of. I think he needs to find his position. I don't think he's not fast enough to play on the wing in Liverpool's current setup, and he's probably still a little bit young and not quite physical enough to play in the midfield as well. So a season in the Championship, he can go there and he can set the Championship alight. Then I think Liverpool will find a use for him. He's got to get himself to that level, improve himself at that level, and we could well be talking about Ben Woodburn as a very, very talented Liverpool player in the future, and I think we'd all hope that to be the case. So we're going to move on then. The big talk at the moment is around Christian Pulisic, not Pulisic. I got set straight on this by Grant Wall last week. He was calling him and he knows him, so I always tend to, even though it might just be the American pronunciation, but apparently Pulisic, not Pulisic. That interview, by the way, will be going out on I'll put the Pulisic bit out on YouTube for people to watch, but the full interview with him, he writes for Sports Illustrated, knows Christian quite well, did a chapter on him in his latest book as well, and we talk about the state of American soccer and MLS, etc., and a few bits and pieces. So really, really interesting stuff, and about Mo Salah as well, because he got to interview him last season. Regardless, Paul Joyce has been talking about him. in the Times, there's a Times article, he says Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp likes him, but not at 60 million. It's expanded upon because we don't have a Times subscription, because he wants a Times subscription. It sounds like this, us. But the Liverpool Echo have done us a solid there, and he writes, it's almost 2 years since Liverpool bid around 11 for Pulisic, then a highly rated 17-year-old. The offer was dismissed, and the wage value was soared to 62 million, which is the reputed figure that Dortmund would consider doing business, suggests the talent has made remarkable strides in the interim. But if you crunch the numbers, then it becomes clear why Liverpool, and specifically Klopp, given his inside knowledge of the player and his former club, would balk at making a bid at this price. And he goes on to talk about a little bit about his stats. And again, it's something that Chris and I covered on the podcast. He asked me about it, and my opinion was this, is that whilst you can say, look, I'm sure, I've no doubt that Liverpool could afford to pay the money that's there. I'm sure they could pay the 62 million if needs be. However, that is a ridiculous gamble on a 19-year-old. And it goes back, what Grant Wild was saying to me is, I was saying, well, look, here's the future of American, the US men's national team. He could be the face, he could be enough to lead that nation to the World Cup. And he was a bit like, well, yeah, he's a big talent, but he's still very young, and there's a good chance as far as his development goes. If he has his development stunted, then we're not going to see him become that. And the problem is right now, he's not better than Sadio Mane. He's not better than Mohamed Salah, and he's not better than Roberto Firmino. And in order for him to prove himself better than them, he's going to need game time. It's not the kind of thing that you can just do in training. At that age, he needs to play regular, consistent football. And in that regard, Borussia Dortmund's the best place for him to be, at least in the short term. Now, what is interesting is the tweet that's phrased by Paul, by Paul Joyce, and he says, the numbers do not stack up for Liverpool. Not yet anyway, which is what we know, is that, look, Jurgen likes the player likes Jurgen. There will be an interest there from Liverpool's perspective, but until you start to see him getting the goals and assists return, I think Liverpool would take a gamble at 20 million. I think that would be fair. I don't think, 20, 25 million, but when you're talking about that, that would be, as far as outfield players go, well, not non-centre half outfield players, in any other season, that's Liverpool's transfer record smashed for a 19-year-old kid who's just not at that level yet. Now, I'm not saying he won't get there, and that's the point. He has got the talent to get there, but he needs to prove it. Unfortunately, Liverpool are at a level right now where I think Liverpool should be looking to buy an 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old absolute wonder kid to learn off Mane, etc. It might be a bit soon for him, and it might, look, if it leaves the door open for more games for Curtis Jones, for more games for Ryan Brewster, those lads could prove to be at the level of a similar level of talent, and you've not had to go out and spend £60-odd million on it. So whilst I would, look, if it was just me, if this was Football Manager, or my club team, or whatever, or my Master League team, or whatever a current FIFA reference is, I would just do it, because if I've got the money there, it would be burning the hole in my arse pocket, and I like Pulisic, and I would just go out and make it happen. But I understand why Liverpool, whilst we're prepared to spend big money on players now, look at the profile of who those players are. These are lads who have consistently proven themselves, or at least have had one season, have had one breakout season. He hasn't had that yet, and Liverpool are not likely to be the club, but he gets it. So, listen, he might well move to Chelsea, which just means that he's going to end up out on loan somewhere at some point, and then eventually he'll end up at Liverpool, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. Before I get onto your comments, though, and I'm interested to get your thoughts, particularly on the Pulisic stuff and the Ben Woodburn. And anyone's got points on Kirivea, please do as well. I just want to point you towards the website. So we've got exclusive interviews with Andy Robertson, Xherdan Shaqiri, Shea Ojo and Joe Gomez. So I got to speak to all players in the mix zone after the Liverpool Man United game. It's interesting. We had a little bit of an issue with the video file. So the audio's there. We've put some pictures alongside it. It's still interesting, particularly because Shaqiri's walking off the pitch, having just scored an overhead kick against the Manx. I did ask him about, the people who may be critical about whether he thinks he's good enough at this level. No sense that there's any fears from him in that regard, and got a little bit of a laugh reaction when I mentioned the fact that Gary Neville was a bit of a naysayer of his. Really good stuff with Andy Robertson, talking about how Jurgen Klopp's going to absolutely bully them to death while they're in their area and training camp. In addition to that, the lads have just done the Reds transfer roundup, so if you want more in-depth and detailed content on what's happening in Liverpool's transfer regards, please do get involved with all that. There's loads of amazing stuff. There's the podcast, there's an exclusive section of the podcast as well. Moreover, I've got an interview with Jurgen Klopp that I did while I was over in the States. That's going to be going on there. You're going to see the full uncut video there. Jurgen Klopp is amazing. You know this, and I know this, and I know this firsthand. So if you want to watch that video, you can get involved with it. Again, and the ground. While there's just so much amazing stuff going there, it's completely free for the first month. So if you want to try it out, this is an amazing time to do it as the season ramps up. We're going to be getting you ready. We're going to get you fired up for the new season. And again, we've actually managed to break through a little bit in pre-season to get some, exclusive words with people who are actually at the club, having influence on the things that you're going to be seeing on the pitch. So yes, right. Time to shoot over to the comments. Let's do that right now. Shai, have you got something lined up for me?
Yeah, so there's split opinion on Pulisic, really. So we had one early on. Daniel Jones was saying Salah and Bobby was shattered in the Champions League final. If we had more options in the squad up front, we could have got goals. We could have given them the rest they needed, and things might have turned out differently. But then there was a couple. So Suraj Radhakrishnan says 65 million for a potential backup and currently unproven player. It's too much, all this talk, because he made Moreno look a bit stupid for 45 minutes. Yeah. Big whoop, not a player of Liverpool quality for me.
And that's it. And at the minute, Shea Ojo has scored senior goals for Liverpool. I'm not saying that he's necessarily going to be a Liverpool player or whatever, but you're talking a kind of similar age. It's not costing you anything. The lad's got talent. It's not going to, it's not going to be a £60 million gamble. So, I'll give my opinion. Please do keep them coming. Sorry, Mikhail Turovsky saying I go away to the States for a week and start calling it soccer. Not only just in reference to the interview itself, I think I've done that a couple of times. I don't have no interest in calling it that, but when you're talking about how the Americans perceive it, we call it soccer in that regard.
So Sankar says, I watched Pulisic in the Bundesliga. He is good and bad there. He needs to prove himself before Liverpool pays that kind of money, which kind of echoed what the others were saying.
Exactly. Look, I'll give you an example of this. If he was playing for Chelsea, for Liverpool, for Man United, etc., no one in the Bundesliga would pay £60 million for him. That's the Bundesliga English tax there. That's Borussia Dortmund having no interest in selling him and just chancing their arm and saying, look, they'll want to keep him. They'll want to keep him and develop him. But they know that someone in England might be stupid enough to pay that kind of money. And listen, it might be Chelsea and he might be an absolute revelation for them. But that's a gamble that Chelsea can afford to or maybe need to take, particularly because they lack a Champions League football.
So, yeah, we've got a few things on Woodburn as well. So I asked in the comments if people think it's a good move for him. As a fella said, yeah, it's a good move for him. Defo had game time promised to him. Callum Smith says, I'm gutted that we haven't given him more of a chance, but if Wilson can't get a game, it's no surprise. If Woodburn gets 30 plus games in a decent side, then it's a great experience for him.
Absolutely. And we said this before, we saw it. John Joe Shelby going on loan to Blackpool. We've seen Harry Wilson having good loan spells. But Hull was the one, of course, that stands out last season. When Liverpool send good players down to the Championship, we want to see them be amongst the best players in the Championship. And unfortunately, it's difficult to do that in really difficult circumstances. Harry Wilson's notwithstanding, you want lads to be tested at a good level. And let's be honest, we kind of look down on the Championship a little bit at times, but we shouldn't. It's the best second league in world football by an absolute mile. So it is a very, very competitive league. And as I say, it's still got a little bit more of that physical side, perhaps more so than the Premier League. So he's a lad who needs to be toughened up and roughed up. And if he can go there and he can survive and flourish, then, and particularly given his age, there's still plenty of time to make himself a Liverpool player off the back of it.
So we had a couple of blue super chats early on. So Archie B. Gaiman just said, all right, Paul.
Hi, I am all right, thanks.
And then Chris's right bollock says, is Werner still an option? Bobby in 10 next season?
Maybe. This is the thing. Jurgen Klopp talked a bit about this. I think he might have done it in the interview with me, but I've definitely seen him saying it. It's just about the volume and quality of players that are available. Is that Liverpool have a very distinct profile of footballer they're looking for. It's not necessarily like an ability profile, it's a mental profile coupled with an ability profile. And we only sign perfect players who are absolutely perfect for us. And that means in terms of what they cost and in terms of who they are and in terms of what they can do on the pitch. So unless someone is absolutely spot on for it, then yeah, I can't see Liverpool making a move. Here's one thing. Someone said, actually, I've just lost it. There was a comment about how you'd make the money back on the shirts in the US. Right, just to clarify this, it's not a thing. Clubs don't make money on volume of shirt sales, not in the way that people do. So it's a total myth that you make your money back on a transfer by selling names on the back of the shirt, because effectively that the money that gets made on shirts would go to New Balance. It would go to whomever. New Balance license Liverpool effectively to make their kit. So that notion that a transfer can pay for itself in shirt sales is complete and utter. It's a myth of modern football effectively. But in terms of raising the club's profile, there is an imperceptible and immeasurable, at least in the short term, benefit to having someone like Pulisic. It means that you would win over the United States. So if you've got a lot of people who would be sat on the fringe or sat on the fence between whether they want to follow Liverpool or Chelsea or blah blah blah, having that American star would make Liverpool a much more enticing prospect to those kind of fans. Now, you then can win them over and have some real hardcore fans off the back of that, but also you're then talking about, it's then people who go to the club store and buy t-shirts and hats and stuff, and that money does go to Liverpool in a more roundabout way. So there is a benefit to getting Pulisic, absolutely.
The stuff as well,
but
like
not that way.
Seeing the players appear in Nivea adverts and stuff, there's a good chance that companies will want to come and sponsor you to have Pulisic appear in their adverts.
Exactly. For Liverpool, that is from the marketing perspective, you're more likely to pick up American brands, and you can expose a market in that regard. So yeah, but just all I'm saying is just not the shirt stuff, because that is a myth.
We've got a couple green super chat from Alan White, and he's got a couple of questions. He says, if Pulisic is worth 65 million, how much is Trent worth? And he also says, how quickly can you neck a pint of Guinness, have the crack in Dublin?
We will have to find out the answers to that question tomorrow and the next few days. So we're getting up at the crack of dawn tomorrow to get the ferry over to Dublin. We're doing a sold out live show on Friday night, and then it's Saturday, it's the match. We're going to be hanging out with some Dublin based Reds, and we're going to be going the game and probably drinking more than a couple of pints of Guinness. So I'll try and find the answer to that question. And in answer to the first one, exactly, Trent Alexander-Arnold, I don't even think he's had his true breakout season yet. He's still 19 years old. We've still got 2 or 3 years before Trent, more really. You could have 3 or 4 years before Trent hits his true peak prime years. And yeah, if Pulisic is worth that much, then I agree. Trent Alexander-Arnold is there. And the point is, these players are not worth that much, but players are only worth what someone is willing to pay for them. But I take your point, is that Trent is an absolutely hot asset at the moment. And yeah, his value will be ludicrous if he fulfills that potential. One more.
Yeah, and got another couple of super chats here as well. Thanks very much. So, Kieska says, we are good for now. Let the kid develop and play every game for Dortmund rather than sit on the bench in England. Yeah.
His value's not going to get, that I think that's it. I think this season he will live up to that value. And I don't see his value I don't see him being an 80 million, 90, 100 million pound player come this time next year. Now, you might have a little bit of a bidding war, or you might have to face some competition from other people. But, if he needs to go this season and he needs to get in excess, a bare minimum of double figures goals and assists, I think, or thereabouts. Maybe it's, 15 goals and 9 assists or so, or whatever. Find a rough balance. And that would be when he would be worth it. But yeah, other than that, yeah. Just a few people asking the question about the Jurgen Klopp interview, where I need to get off here and start editing it. It will be going a bit, well, if it's not this week, it will be next week that it's going out. But as I say, there's so much stuff to get involved with on the website. So please do go over and give it a try. I've said this plenty of times, but it makes all this possible. If you enjoy the free content and you want more, then there's loads more for you. If you enjoy the free content and you think like, oh, well, look, I like it. I want to keep as much of the content free as possible. Then, by joining up and getting a subscription, which is £5 a month after your 3-month trial, you help to support what we do, whether you watch it or not. And look, if you don't want to do any of that, if you're happy with just the free stuff, be happy with the free stuff, again. But be thankful to the people who do subscribe, because they're the guys that make it possible for you guys to watch the free stuff. So let's give them a round of applause in the comments underneath. Wonderful. Listen, thank you very much for watching the show today. Drop a like on this video if you want Pulisic to join Liverpool at some point. Subscribe to the YouTube channel on the road to 300,000. And as I say, if you want more amazing in-depth content and interviews, get to the redmentv.com.